The moment a marriage dies rarely looks dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a woman standing in front of a mirror, adjusting a red dress, while her husband finally decides he has heard enough lies. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 44 years old, and for most of my life, I believe patience solved problems. Patience built my construction company from a pickup truck and a borrowed trailer. Patience carried me through 18 years of marriage. Patience helped me ignore dozens of things that should have triggered alarms much sooner. Looking back, patience nearly cost me everything. Rebecca stood in front of the bedroom mirror with one hand on her hip, studying her reflection from different angles. She seemed excited, energized, focused. That alone felt strange. She hadn't looked at me with that level of interest in years. The party invitation sat on the dresser beside her phone. I already knew the guest list. I knew because 3 months earlier I had started paying attention. Real attention. The kind that leaves a paper trail. The kind that turns instincts into evidence. Most husbands investigate phones. I investigated patterns. Credit card statements. Shared account transfers. Restaurant charges. Rideshare records. Small details create maps. Maps reveal destinations. Rebecca thought she hit her tracks well. She never spent enough money to trigger suspicion. She never crossed obvious lines. Instead, she operated in gray areas. Lunches labeled as networking. Happy hours labeled as client development. Conference trips that somehow required extra evenings away from home. One name appeared more often than the others. Tyler Grant. I first noticed him inside a reimbursement statement, then inside social media interactions, then inside a series of private event registrations. Every month, another coincidence connected them. Coincidences eventually become statistics. Statistics become conclusions. Rebecca picked up her phone and smiled at something on the screen. The expression lasted less than 2 seconds. Most people would miss it. I had spent months studying it. She smiled that way when Tyler contacted her. She smiled that way when she thought nobody watched. She smiled that way when she stepped outside our marriage and into a fantasy version of herself. I remained seated in the chair near the window, calm, controlled, measured. A week earlier, I had met with an attorney. 2 weeks earlier, I had separated business assets from personal exposure. 3 weeks earlier, I had opened a new banking structure designed to protect future earnings. Rebecca believed she was preparing for a glamorous evening. I was preparing for a completely different future. She grabbed her purse. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I looked at her for several seconds before answering. "If you walk out that door wearing that dress to meet Tyler, don't come back." Her eyes narrowed. Then she laughed. A short laugh. Dismissive. Familiar. The same laugh that had ended every serious conversation between us for years. She believed this was another argument. Another warning. Another boundary I would eventually abandon. She picked up her car keys and headed toward the door. Then her phone lit up again. The message preview appeared for less than a second before the screen dimmed. But I caught 7 words. 7 words that changed everything. "He still has no idea, does he?" I stared at the message for 3 seconds before the screen went dark. 7 words. That was all it took. 7 words erased months of self-doubt and replaced them with clarity. "He still has no idea, does he?" Rebecca had already left the house by then. The garage door closed behind her, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. Suspicion drains energy. Certainty gives it back. I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and pulled up a folder labeled Project Horizon. The name sounded harmless. That was intentional. Inside sat 4 months of records. Screenshots. Transaction histories. Event registrations. Membership invoices. Location data. Tyler Grant had entered my life as a name buried inside a restaurant receipt. Then he became a pattern. Then he became a variable. By the time I saw that text message, he had become evidence. People imagine betrayal arrives through dramatic discoveries. Most of the time it arrives through accounting. A charge here. A transfer. There. A reservation that serves no practical purpose. Every financial decision leaves fingerprints. Rebecca taught marketing at a regional consulting firm. Tyler ran business development for a private software company. Their professional overlap explained a few encounters. It failed to explain dozens. 3 lunches became 7. 7 became 15. Then came the charity galas, the networking mixers, the private events requiring separate registration fees. Every month created a tighter circle around the same 2 names. I opened a spreadsheet and reviewed my timeline again. Dates lined up with surprising precision. Whenever Rebecca claimed she needed personal space, Tyler appeared nearby. Whenever Tyler traveled, Rebecca suddenly developed reasons to travel as well. Human behavior follows patterns. Emotions create habits. Habits leave tracks. Around midnight, my attorney sent a secure message. We had spoken several times over the previous month. He specialized in asset protection and family law. Smart men prepare before a crisis. Wise men prepare before anyone realizes a crisis exists. We had already moved several future projects into protected business structures. My construction company remained healthy. My personal exposure shrank significantly. Every legal move followed state law. Every document carried proper signatures. Every transfer respected timing requirements. Rebecca still believed our finances looked exactly the same as they had 6 months earlier. That assumption would become expensive. I leaned back and remembered a very different version of her. 20 years ago, Rebecca worked 2 jobs while finishing college. We ate frozen dinners in a tiny apartment. We counted dollars before buying furniture. We celebrated our first anniversary with takeout because neither of us could justify a fancy restaurant. Back then she chased stability. Somewhere along the way she started chasing attention. Attention became validation. Validation became addiction. Addiction always demands larger doses. My phone vibrated again. Another message arrived through a private monitoring service I had hired 6 weeks earlier. The investigator rarely contacted me at night. That alone raised my pulse. I opened the report. 2 photographs loaded onto the screen. The first showed Rebecca entering the charity event. The second showed Tyler arriving separately exactly 9 minutes later. Then I noticed something else. A third person stood beside Tyler. A woman. The investigator attached a single note beneath the image. Ethan, I think you need to know who she is. The photographs loaded slowly, each frame highlighting interactions I had already mapped in spreadsheets. Rebecca moved with the precision of someone rehearsed, greeting guests and exchanging pleasantries while my eyes tracked micro-expressions, hand gestures, and subtle glances. Tyler appeared twice within the first 20 minutes, both times positioned at angles I had calculated in advance. I had already cross-referenced corporate event schedules, matching them to private dinner reservations and credit card authorizations, every numerical entry creating a lattice of incontrovertible patterns. My legal counsel had advised documenting every sequence before any confrontation. These records would serve as undeniable evidence of intent should the need arise. I zoomed in on each photo, noting the distance between them, the tilt of her head, the placement of her hands, annotating notes that detailed every nuance, every small signal of alliance. Rebecca had convinced herself that micromanaging these interactions would appear spontaneous, but she underestimated the depth of my observation, the precision of my audit. The spreadsheets revealed financial allocations that seemed routine, but with each line, I traced the flow of payments to auxiliary venues and service providers, a network that indicated premeditated patterns of behavior. I logged timestamps against email confirmations, mapping Tyler's arrivals and departures with uncanny exactness, revealing overlaps that created questions beyond coincidence. Then I turned to our joint accounts. Transaction histories showed subtle reallocations of funds during periods she had cited as personal errands, amounts that were minor individually but collectively formed a trajectory reflecting behavioral shifts over time. I marked these 4. Discussion with our attorney, preparing a strategy that ensured separation of personal and business assets while protecting company equity. Each documented movement, every financial pattern, and every photograph coalesced into a narrative I could deploy if necessary, a story of ongoing pretense and hidden alignment. Then I noticed a new variable. A new contact appeared on her email metadata, one whose identity I did not recognize, yet who communicated frequently with Tyler. The frequency and timing suggested coordination, a depth I had not anticipated. I initiated verification protocols, cross-checking public records, social media footprints, and prior event registrations, tracing connections with methodical care. Every hour invested expanded the map, the clarity sharpening like an edge. As I reached the latest correspondence, a detail emerged that altered my understanding of the network. An invitation misfiled in her calendar indicated she planned an encounter at a location she had claimed was company-related, a spot that correlated precisely with a private function Tyler attended months earlier. The convergence of these data points created a pivot, revealing potential escalation beyond the observed interactions. I leaned back, evaluating the implications. This shift suggested the narrative I had constructed required adjustment, a recalibration of assumptions, and perhaps immediate legal attention. A single anomaly in an otherwise predictable pattern now demanded a decision. Act quickly to secure evidence and assets, or allow the window to expand, increasing exposure. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, poised to cross-reference once more, when a notification appeared. A new photograph uploaded by the investigator, timestamped 30 minutes after the prior set, capturing Rebecca in proximity to an individual previously absent from all prior events. The image blurred slightly, but provided enough clarity to confirm recognition, forcing a rapid reassessment of the unfolding situation. The face in the photograph belonged to Olivia Grant, Tyler's wife. I stared at the image longer than I should have. Every theory I had built over the previous 4 months shifted. At once. Until that moment, I had viewed Tyler as a destination. Suddenly, he looked more like a participant inside a larger game. The investigator attached 3 additional files. I opened each one carefully. Olivia attended several of the same charity functions. She appeared at networking dinners. She shared photos from industry events. Yet one detail stood out immediately. Rebecca and Olivia followed each other online. They exchanged comments. They attended the same fundraising luncheon 6 months earlier. According to public appearances, these women knew each other. That changed everything. I called the investigator. He answered on the second ring. "Tell me something," I said. "Does Olivia know?" Silence lingered for several seconds. "That is the interesting part," he replied. "I think she does." My attention sharpened. People hide affairs. People hide financial schemes. People hide future plans. Very few people openly maintain social relationships with someone involved in a secret relationship unless another objective exists. The investigator forwarded a second report. This one contained communication patterns rather than photographs. Tyler and Rebecca communicated frequently. Olivia communicated with Rebecca almost as often. Several messages clustered around financial conferences and private charity events. The pattern created questions I had never considered. During the following hour, I rebuilt my timeline from scratch. I removed assumptions and focused exclusively on evidence. A different picture emerged. Rebecca never behaved like someone preparing to leave a marriage immediately. She behaved like someone positioning herself. Certain account activities supported that conclusion. Over the previous 8 months, she had increased contributions to a personal investment account. She redirected consulting income into separate holdings. She requested copies of tax returns she had ignored for years. At the time, I interpreted those actions as curiosity. Now they looked strategic. My attorney received a secure package before midnight. Every new document entered our archive. Every transaction received categorization. Every communication received timestamp. Verification. Preparation creates leverage. Leverage creates options. I intended to have both. Around 1 in the morning, another report arrived. This one carried a simple title, Property Search Results. I opened the file expecting another dead end. Instead, I found a limited liability company formed 11 months earlier. The ownership structure sat behind multiple layers of registration. That alone meant very little. Then I reached the payment records. 2 names appeared as authorized contributors. Tyler Grant, Rebecca Walker. My pulse slowed instead of accelerating. Extreme emotions cloud judgment. Clarity wins cases. Clarity protects assets. Clarity exposes people who believe they are smarter than everyone around them. I reviewed the property records attached to the filing. The company had recently submitted paperwork related to a condominium purchase. Then I noticed the final page. The mailing address associated with the company was neither Tyler's home nor his office. It was a residential address less than 12 miles from my house. And according to county records, the closing date was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The condominium documents opened on my laptop, and I traced every signature, every notarized acknowledgement, and every transfer of ownership. Tyler and Rebecca were listed as co-signers on a limited liability structure I had only just discovered, but the implications had already settled in my mind. I calculated the cash flow, expenses, and projected returns, noting how each figure aligned with the charity events, the private dinners, and the subtle movements across our shared city. I built a timeline in real time, cross-referencing email headers, registration confirmations, and credit card authorizations. Each layer of data reinforced the other, forming a mesh that revealed deliberate coordination rather than random coincidence. I flagged every anomaly for legal analysis, preparing memos for asset segregation and corporate shielding, ensuring that personal and business holdings remained insulated from any opportunistic maneuvers. Simultaneously, I reviewed monitoring reports from the last 6 weeks, examining camera angles and timestamps to correlate physical presence with digital activity. Rebecca had assumed that separating events by 30 minutes or relocating meetings to off-site venues would obscure patterns, but I had layered everything into a comprehensive visual map. The repeated overlaps indicated a strategy designed to create plausible deniability, yet each choice left an indelible mark that, when combined with financial and legal data, painted a coherent narrative. I ran a cross-audit against our joint bank accounts, confirming which transfers coincided with pretextual errands, identifying subtle reallocations, and correlating them with investment inflows to accounts under her control. Every minute of her planning, every strategic misdirection, every attempt at controlling perception had been documented and categorized. While reviewing the latest photographs, I detected the direction of her gaze in each image, cross-referencing it against previously established seating arrangements and event layouts to infer intention. I created a matrix, placing each individual involved in their respective spatial and temporal positions, linking them through the observable evidence of their interactions. The result highlighted patterns too precise to dismiss. Rebecca was constructing a parallel network that intersected with Tyler's assets and social connections, signaling a potential escalation beyond previous encounters. My attorney and I had already coordinated the formation of protective legal structures, transferring personal holdings to trust accounts and preparing contingencies for immediate execution if necessary. As I continued the cross-verification process, an unexpected entry appeared within a municipal filing database, a property acquisition scheduled to finalize in less than 48 hours. The address was a residential condominium, precisely 12 miles from my house, coinciding with the timeline of the social gatherings I had monitored. Every indicator suggested this was more than an isolated decision. The alignment of legal, financial, and social data pointed to a deliberate expansion of influence into territory I considered under my oversight. I leaned forward, noting the closing date and comparing it against prior communications and event scheduling. Each verification step reinforced the urgency of intervention. A final notation in the report indicated a previously unidentified liaison connected to the property filing, introducing a variable I had yet to account for. The implication was immediate. The landscape of control and leverage had shifted, requiring recalibration of my strategy, and the window for preemptive action was shrinking rapidly. By 2 a.m, I had cross-checked the condominium records with the property title and the recent bank transfers. Each detail connected like nodes in a network, revealing the careful orchestration behind the acquisition. I compiled the data into a report with annotated graphs that traced fund flows, timelines, and overlapping interactions, highlighting every strategic step Rebecca had taken over the past year. My attorney reviewed the preliminary draft, suggesting adjustments to safeguard my holdings while preserving the integrity of the investigation. I then compared the timestamps from the investigator's photographs with the digital footprint of communication logs. Tyler's messages corresponded to hotel bookings and dinner reservations, while Rebecca's activity mirrored each movement, suggesting coordinated planning rather than coincidence. Each correlation reinforced a narrative of premeditation, compelling me to prepare contingency actions for asset segregation and legal recourse. I initiated further verification, cross-referencing public records for Olivia Grant to identify her patterns and interactions at overlapping events, confirming that her presence aligned with the timing of Tyler and Rebecca's encounters. The cumulative evidence created a three-dimensional map of relationships, financial flows, and social positioning that illustrated the depth of strategic maneuvering. I documented every phone call, every confirmed transaction, and every visual verification in a chronological ledger. For the first time, the matrix revealed the possibility of escalation, the expansion of influence into previously unmonitored spaces, signaling potential risks to both personal and business interests. I formulated scenarios in real time, estimating reaction outcomes, prioritizing moves that would secure assets and maintain leverage. By 3:30, I had initiated communication with the bank's compliance division to flag unusual account activity, reinforcing the protective layer around critical holdings. Simultaneously, I configured notifications for new filings associated with the LLC and related entities, ensuring immediate awareness of any change in ownership or registered addresses. Every procedural step enhanced control and limited exposure, transforming uncertainty into tactical advantage. Then a final element appeared, an encrypted message indicating a meeting scheduled for the coming weekend at a private location not previously accounted for. Its existence implied coordination outside the monitored channels, potentially introducing new variables into the network. I paused, recognizing that the window to act had narrowed. Immediate decisions were required to prevent further entanglement, and the new data suggested that the balance of influence could shift before the weekend arrived, demanding accelerated verification and deployment of prearranged safeguards. The encrypted meeting details arrived at 4:12 a.m. through the investigator's secure portal. I expected another restaurant reservation, another networking event disguised as professional development, another carefully managed overlap between schedules. Instead, I found a conference room reservation inside a private financial services building downtown. The reservation listed 4 attendees: Rebecca, Tyler, Olivia, and a fourth name I had never seen before: Daniel Mercer. I started digging immediately. Daniel Mercer was a corporate attorney specializing in asset restructuring, business acquisitions, and trust formation. That discovery changed the entire landscape. People planning an affair booked dinners. People planning a future together hire attorneys. I accessed every public filing connected to Mercer over the previous 18 months. Several entities appeared. Most had nothing to do with my situation. One stood out: a trust created 7 months earlier. The registered agent connected indirectly to the same limited liability company holding the condominium. I exported the records and forwarded them to my attorney. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. He rarely called before sunrise. "Ethan," he said, "I think they are preparing for something bigger than a property purchase." I listened carefully. He explained how individuals sometimes create layered ownership structures before major life changes. Separate residences, protected assets, future investment vehicles, strategic transfers. The timing matched perfectly. 7 months earlier, Rebecca had suddenly developed interest in our tax filings. 6 months earlier, she requested copies of business valuations. 5 months earlier, she asked unusual questions about partnership agreements inside my construction company. At the time, each conversation felt isolated. Looking back, every question pointed in the same direction: preparation. My attorney requested immediate copies of every communication log and financial report. By sunrise, we had assembled a comprehensive legal package documenting timelines, ownership structures, asset movement patterns, and emerging risks. Then something unexpected happened. Olivia Grant contacted me directly. Her email arrived through an address I had never seen before. The message contained only 14 words. "You are missing a piece of the puzzle. We need to talk today." Most people would have ignored it. I responded within 3 minutes. 2 hours later, we met inside a private conference room arranged by my attorney. Olivia entered carrying a leather portfolio thick enough to contain years of records. She looked exhausted, focused, determined. She sat down, opened the portfolio, and slid several documents across the table. I recognized Rebecca's signature immediately. Then I recognized Tyler's. Then I saw something that forced every person in the room into silence. The condominium was never their end goal. It was merely phase 1. Olivia pointed toward a series of acquisition documents and trust agreements. "They have been planning this for almost a year," she said quietly. "And Ethan, your company is part of the plan." By mid-morning, I had executed every contingency plan prepared over the previous month. The LLC associated with the condominium was effectively frozen. Transfers required multiple authorizations I controlled. I coordinated with the bank's compliance division to flag every account linked to Rebecca and Tyler for immediate review, ensuring that any attempt to move funds triggered automated holds. Simultaneously, my attorney filed preliminary notices regarding asset claims, creating a legal buffer that forced any further action through oversight channels. Each document I sent contained cross-references to prior transactions, photographs, and communications, creating a trail that made unilateral action by Rebecca or Tyler impossible. I then revisited the investigator's photographic evidence, analyzing body language, seating positions, and timing across every event where they interacted. Every movement I documented added a layer of leverage, transforming what appeared to be a chaotic sequence of social encounters into a predictable, controllable system. I scheduled a review of all private communications, including encrypted messages, focusing on patterns of repeated behavior and flagged discrepancies between stated intentions and observed actions. The analysis revealed a network of influence, including subtle coordination with Olivia, who remained a silent variable until now. By tracking her involvement, I anticipated potential escalation points that could intersect with my personal and business holdings. I confirmed that property filings, scheduled acquisitions, and trust transfers all occurred under conditions that left gaps I had already covered through legal and financial safeguards. Every variable I discovered, every piece of evidence, reinforced the necessity of immediate action before any unexpected movement could compromise the network I controlled. Then a single alert arrived, an off-site meeting scheduled for later that afternoon, unannounced in the communications I had monitored. Its location was a private suite in a financial services building registered under a pseudonymous corporate entity. The timing suggested coordination between Rebecca, Tyler, and at least one additional party not previously documented. I reviewed the map of interactions and cross-referenced financial movements, realizing that if the meeting proceeded without my intervention, it could alter control over certain assets and influence future legal leverage. I sent instructions to my attorney to intercept communications and prepared an updated dossier combining photographs, financial statements, and time-stamped interaction logs. The convergence of physical presence, financial strategy, and legal positioning indicated a pivot point. Every safeguard I had implemented would now be tested in real time. As I closed the laptop and reviewed the dossier one last time, a notification flashed from the investigator. A new photograph had been uploaded. The image captured Rebecca entering a corporate office adjacent to Tyler's confirmed location, her briefcase hand-carried and containing documents marked with codes I recognized from previous filings. This single photograph changed the timing and nature of the intervention I had planned, forcing an immediate reassessment of leverage and strategy to maintain control over the situation. The photograph from the investigator became the final piece. Rebecca entered the office carrying documents connected directly to the trust agreements Olivia had shown us earlier that morning. By then, the situation had moved beyond suspicion, beyond private disappointment, beyond emotional betrayal. It had entered the territory of calculated strategy. The difference mattered. Emotions create mistakes. Strategies create records. Records create consequences. Within 48 hours, my attorney filed a series of protective motions covering corporate assets, future earnings, and intellectual property connected to my construction company. Every structure we created months earlier activated exactly as designed. The trust agreements Rebecca and Tyler had quietly assembled suddenly collided with legal barriers they never anticipated. Their condominium closing stalled. Their financing entered review. Several transactions triggered compliance investigations because the source documentation no longer matched the representations attached to the applications. Nothing dramatic happened. No shouting. No courtroom speeches. No public confrontation. Just paperwork. Most people underestimate paperwork. A signature can build a fortune. Another signature can stop one. Rebecca called 3 times that week. Then 12 times the following week. I let my attorney handle every response. By then, I had already moved into a different chapter of my life. The strangest part was how peaceful everything felt once uncertainty disappeared. For months, I had lived inside questions. Questions consume energy. Answers return it. 6 months later, the condominium still sat tangled inside legal disputes and ownership challenges. Tyler faced financial pressure from multiple directions. Olivia finalized her own separation strategy and protected her interests with the same discipline she had used to expose the truth. Rebecca eventually requested a meeting. I agreed under one condition. Attorneys present. Documentation available. Facts only. She arrived carrying the same confidence I remembered from years earlier, but confidence built on assumptions rarely survives contact with reality. The meeting lasted less than 40 minutes. She spoke about misunderstandings, timing, stress, regret. I listened carefully. Then I opened a binder containing timelines, financial records, communications, property filings, and trust agreements. Every page represented a decision. Every signature represented intent. Every transfer represented preparation. The room grew quiet. Some people lose relationships through a single mistake. Others lose them through 1,000 deliberate choices that feel harmless in the moment. When the meeting ended, Rebecca asked one question. When did you stop trusting me? I thought about that for a second. Then I answered honestly. Trust was never the first thing that disappeared. Respect was. She lowered her eyes and said nothing else. A year later, my company expanded into 2 new states. Revenue reached levels I had once considered impossible. More importantly, my life felt stable again. Clear. Purposeful. Looking back, I learned something valuable. Betrayal rarely begins with a dramatic event. It begins when someone starts believing they deserve access to your future while secretly building one without you. And here is the lesson that stayed with me. People spend years protecting their money, their property, and their careers. Very few protect their peace. Yet peace is the asset that determines the value of everything else. Sometimes the strongest move is neither revenge nor anger. Sometimes it is preparation. Because while others spend their energy creating secrets, prepared people create options. And the funny thing is, 3 weeks ago, I received an email from a name